look at me. I'm shiny and new. Oh, I have a big ass afterburning engine. Breaking the sound barrier is my MO. Look at my guns, my missiles, my stones. I proudly operate off of 8 carriers. I am the Blue Angels. I am the future of the United States Naval Fighter Program. Wait! No! I just got here! The Grumman F-11 F1 Tiger. It was a plane, while perfectly capable in so many ways, became a victim of progress in the Navy's thirst to have better aircraft distinct from their counterparts in what was the newly created United States Air Force. That is, until Wonder King came around and forced standardization upon them. This fighter began as a privately funded concept by Grumman to modernize the recently swept-wing converted F9F6 Cougars, which didn't get a new number because the Navy looked at the thing and went, nah, it's just a minor update, and then the engineers fired back with, but it's a major one, we did all of this shit to it, in which then they argued until suddenly, blam, XF-10F Jaguar. Jaguar! And like a cartoon science lab sequence of shenanigans attempting to find an overtly complicated solution to a simple problem, the engineers at Grumman got to work using all the latest advancements in science and technology of the era to create a supersonic fighter out of the existing designs, using innovations such as area rule for reducing drag at transonic speeds, leading edge slats and better flaps for slow speed maneuvers, spoilerons, an all moving tailplane, a brand new afterburning engine design, you get the point, fancy science, and a big ass flaming zoom tube make plane go faster. By now, the Navy was interested in Grumman's shenanigans and decided to order 2 prototypes, which were designated XF9F8 and XF9F9 because I don't know. The former designation ended up being used for a more straightforward upgrade to the previously mentioned Cougar. Finally, the aircraft would receive proper identification, being accepted as the F-11F1 under the pre-1962 Naval Designation System, beginning production in 1954 until 1959, with over 200 built split between 7 squadrons. And in line with Grumman's usual naming traditions, it became known as the Tiger, not to be confused with the F-7F Tiger Cat, which was originally going to be called the Tomcat, but that was considered too sexual for the repressed 1950s, until the 60s and 70s came along and smashed all of those ultra-conservative values into itty-bitty tiny pieces, coming into use later with a certain other Grumman fighter. So now that's in service, what is it like in context of the game? For the average jet pilot, it's quite decent, but nothing groundbreaking. Against aircraft below its initial battle rating in 9.0, it has the advantage of being Mach 1 capable, being able to run and gun with an armament consisting of 4 Colt Mark 12 20mm cannons, and can be slightly capable of taking on the striker and interceptor roles thanks to a modest array of suspended ordnance, which includes air-to-air missiles, rocket pods, and aerodynamic stones. Otherwise, at its battle rating and above, it will have to rely on going as fast as possible and making surgically timed strikes against its opponents, while attempting not to engage in any sort of prolonged dogfights by extending your turns to maintain speed. The 4 cannons are good enough for taking out at least a couple of fighters despite the light ammo count, the stones and rockets do what they're supposed to do, and the early variant AIM-9s are frankly just retard alert devices. Best used against aircraft with turning radiuses wider than a Hummer limousine pulling out onto the highway, or players with tiny IQs that cry, "But my statistically better aircraft!" and, insert nation here, biased when they get outplayed. As for appearance options, there is only the default skin, unless you sold your soul and or wallet to get the shiny Blue Angel skin, perfect for attempting to look coordinated in badly shot B-roll. Speaking of camouflage, this particular one on our in-game aircraft belongs to VF-33, at the time calling themselves the Tauristers, their patch featuring an extremely angry monkey, which they named Minky. Later, realizing that Taurister monkeys aren't actually very scary and actually can become slightly suicidal in captivity, they ended up changing it to the more future-leaning astronauts in 1961, right as they began transitioning to the more capable Vought F-8 Crusader. Yeah, the F-11 was only active for 1956 to 1961 as the Navy faced 2 major issues with it. First, the range was poor due to limited onboard fuel capacity compounded by an extremely thirsty afterburner, and while the pilots thought well of their feline mounts and the mechanics found the airframe itself easy to work on, the J65 engines were considered unreliable due to poor engineering, and in Grumman's case they found that the afterburning thrusts of these engines were below spec, which is bad. And while the F-11 Tiger was known as the second naval fighter in US history to break the sound barrier, it also has the unfortunate distinction of being the first fighter jet to shoot itself down with its own cannons. The pilot survived though. The Tiger would continue to serve the US Navy in a training role until 1967, giving student pilots a taste of going supersonic before transitioning to fleet fighters, and it would serve the Navy's premier acrobatic team, the Blue Angels, until 1969, when it was finally replaced by the Louisville Slugger.